Hey friends, in order to make your marriage work, and what I mean by work is not just like survive so you stay married, but to make it work passionately, to make it thrive, for there to be love, for there to be bonding, for there to be real connection. In order for this marriage to really work, you got to do two things. Number one, you got to embrace the best version of your spouse. You got to show your spouse the best version of you. But number two, you got to embrace your entire spouse, even the versions of your spouse that you might be less than proud of. And your spouse has to embrace the parts of you that he or she might be less than proud of, because nobody's perfect. But within that imperfection, there's beauty that you have to find, that you have to connect with. There's a halacha that appears in the Gemara in Maseches Brachos. It's a bit of a interesting halacha, but it talks about the laws of davening, the laws of prayer. And when you're davening to Hashem, you got to be clean. But there was a time in history, many millennia ago, where they didn't have the best of cleaning agencies, and it could be that somebody exits the lavatory and isn't perfectly clean internally. Maybe externally they're clean, but internally they're not. And the Talmud debates whether that's good enough. According to one opinion, as long as you're externally clean, even if you're not fully clean on the inside, the pasuk says, "Kol haneshama tahaloka." Every single soul praises God. You're talking to God with your soul, not your body. It's okay if you're less than perfect. But another opinion says, no, Kol atzmoisai termarna. The Torah says, I pray to God, I speak to God with my entire bones, with all my essence, my entire being, my whole self. Which implies my whole self has to be present. My whole self has to be engaged. Not just the soul, but the body too. And to this day, there's a debate amongst poskim which way we follow. But in practice, we try to be completely clean, because we believe that God wants to embrace not just the best version of us, which is the soul, the obvious version of us, which is the soul, and that already is beautiful, but he wants to embrace all of us, the body. The relationship has to be not just who we are deep down inside at our core, but all of us, even our imperfections. God wants to be part of this relationship. We take a look at our spouse and we say, I love you, not just the parts of you that make me feel good, which is already a plus if you have that, but every single part of you I'm going to work on embracing. This ties into one of the first father-in-law, son-in-law debates in history, recorded in this week's Parsha, the Parsha of Yisro. Moshe Rabbeinu is teaching Torah and answering questions to the entire Jewish population, which was about 3 million people. And his father-in-law, Yisro, who was felt, I guess, almost like an outsider. He was a convert. He wasn't part of the Jewish people earlier in Egypt. And he's coming as an outsider and says, Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm going to do a bit of an audit over here. I have some suggestions. You're tiring yourself out, man. You're answering the questions and teaching Torah to 3 million people. You're overdoing it. And Moshe Rabbeinu consults Hashem, and the conclusion is Moshe Rabbeinu starts, with his father-in-law's advice, starts delegating to various teachers. And there'll be various levels of courts, various levels of education, and we're going to start diversifying and delegating, and it's not all going to come through Moshe. It's going to trickle down and filter through various rabbis in various styles. And Mefarshim ask, well, why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu think of that himself? Was he so arrogant that he said, only I can do it, nobody else can do it? Moshe Rabbeinu meant very well. Moshe Rabbeinu saw the Jewish people as he saw himself. Moshe Rabbeinu had incredible clarity. Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to God face to face. Moshe Rabbeinu had incredible humility. Moshe Rabbeinu was on the highest of levels as a human being. He had what Kabbalah calls re'iyah. He had the clarity of vision. He saw Torah, he saw reality, he saw human beings, he saw them for who they truly were at their core. And he said, I want the Jewish people to have that. I want them to have what I have. And Yisro says, well, that's beautiful. It's beautiful that you see them so purely. It's beautiful that you see their souls. But as you see their souls, you're neglecting their body. As you see their soul, you're neglecting their mind and heart. You're neglecting the rest of their human existence. And that's beautiful for while they're in the desert in the clouds of glory. But at some point, they're going to have to work for a living. At some point, there's going to be real issues. At some point, you're going to have to talk to them, not just the best version of them. And to do that, you have to allow the Torah to filter through their mind and heart and not just talk directly to the soul. Yisrael was saying that these Jewish people need a relationship with God that doesn't just embrace the soul but embraces everything, because that's what marriage is. When God had given us the Torah at Mount Sinai, Shlomo HaMelech describes this relationship as a marriage, which is interesting. God is teaching us Torah. I would think that the relationship is more like a student-teacher relationship, but it's not. It's a husband-wife relationship, because God isn't just giving us Torah, information, something He has. He's sharing with us who He is, and He expects us to reciprocate with all of us who we are. And when we can fill up that relationship and make it more wholesome, make it deeper, make it real, embrace everything, the relationship is a lot more sustainable, because we're not just embracing the parts of our spouse that make us feel good. We're embracing everything. There's a story where one of the Magid of Mezrich's Talmidim, Rabbi Aaron of Karlin, used to have Yechidus, private audience with the Magid of Mezrich. Usually when a chassid goes to his Rebbe for Yechidus, for a private audience, and for the Rebbe to pierce into his soul and to look at him and to tell him how he could become the best version of himself. So usually a chassid would go to mikvah beforehand, purify himself in a ritual bath beforehand. Rabbi Aaron of Karlin used to make a point of not going to mikvah when he would have his private audience with the Magid of Mezrich, because he wanted the Magid to see not just the best version of him, the purest version of him. He wanted to see all of him, so he could lift him up and embrace all of him, so he can lift up his entire self. We look at our spouse and we appreciate the best version of our spouse, the version of our spouse that makes us feel good. But then we elevate and mature to a level where we can embrace all of our spouse, the entire self, the entire being, and the relationships becomes sustainable, meaningful, deep, real, purposeful. This is what God does with us. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.